Welcome to the Liberating Joy and Learning podcast. I'm Verena Beckstrand, and today we're continuing our discussion of learning blockades in this season or category of our podcast entitled Liberating Healing in Our Learning. Last time we discussed the first learning blockade, which is assuming defeat, and today we'll start with surrendering desires. I love how Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes this. If we don't take charge of its direction, our life will be controlled by the outside to serve the purpose of some other agency. Close quote. Surrendering desires is the other imposed, dead-end, and uninspiring goal. When we feel a sense of pointlessness in our lives, it's because we've lost a sense of our personal center. We've lost a connection to our wondering and the most inspiring desires that we have for our growth. Instead, we have surrendered that center and those heartfelt desires to someone else's control. When learning claims don't come from our own desires for growth, we are left adrift, without purpose, and free to be manipulated by external forces and agendas. Instead, we should make sure that our learning claims inspire us to action rather than to a sense of powerlessness that comes from surrendering our desires to goals we don't really want. So what learning claims do you hold on to that aren't really your own?
As we've been preparing for this podcast, I've struggled with that question because I'm not really sure how to answer it.
I'm not sure you have any. You're pretty, I don't care.
Yeah,
that's my gut reaction to that.
I have I do care about what people think of me in a certain extent.
Right.
Professionally, the people that I work with, I care about, but I don't try to change myself to meet their expectations. We all work together as we are, and we accept each other as we are. Mm-hmm. And so outside of that, like I said, I really don't care.
Right. Yeah, you care a lot less than I do,
yes.
For sure. When I was thinking of this, I was thinking of goals concerning raising my family and taking care of my home. And now that's shifted quite a bit in the last few years. But when my children were young, that was all I thought about, was, taking care of my home, taking care of my children. And there were certain things, canning food for food storage and things like that. I see social media, I think, really fosters this, right?
Yes, it does.
That we suddenly feel like we have desires that we should, external desires that we should have, which aren't our own.
Right.
A few years ago, I heard from a prominent religious leader. She was like, I don't make anything that involves yeast. I don't. And she had just made that decision because her life was too crazy. She did not want to, that was kind of a line that she drew in the sand, right? And that's not mine, but I totally get that. Sometimes there are things where just like, I don't do that.
Right. Well, and I have to qualify my position. There was a time in my life when I was younger, before I got married, for instance, where I did feel like I had to try to conform to get a date, to have people like me. And as I've grown and matured, I realized that really doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
I am who I am.
Right.
And if I accept who I am, and for instance, I remember just before I graduated from college, we were engaged, and I had it was my last semester of school, and I was one of my last classes to get my degree. We had a project, and everybody knew that we were getting married at spring break.
Right.
And I got like a C on the project. Uh-huh. And my professor called me and says, "You doing okay? I mean, this you could and." Do you need more time for this? I would know you're getting married and things. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'd been in school long enough that I was ready to be done, and I really didn't care. I mean, as long as I got a passing grade and I got my diploma and I passed, I couldn't care about being the top of the class or, having accolades and things like that. I got to the point where it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I think this one certainly diminishes its power with age.
Yes,
in
it does.
A lot of ways, I think.
It can.
Not completely, yes.
It can diminish with age.
Yeah. Okay, so think about that. Think about where you have surrendered your desires to what other people expect of you, okay? The next learning blockade is rejecting failures and successes. I love this quote by Victor Hugo that sums up this blockade. He who does not weep does not see. Earlier in Les Mis, Hugo claims, had Napoleon at that very moment in the Battle of Waterloo remembered his infantry, he would have won the battle. So we can't see if we can't feel pain, and we can't win if we aren't aware of what can be successful. Certainly there are lots more examples in that book of rejecting failures and successes and owning them, right? That Les Mis, that's almost like a huge theme of that entire book.
Now, how can we get over a mountain if we are blind to the weaknesses that could leave us stranded, or strengths we could use to overcome the challenges we will face on that journey? If you can't find peace in your learning by clarifying another lens, make sure you fully understand your failures and successes. Rejecting either is a common blockade to miss. Life is crazy, and it's easy to miss our failures and successes, small and big. And I think that's very important.
Right.
It's important that we recognize when we succeed, and we recognize when we fail, and realize, okay, like we discussed in our last podcast about taking that defeat and letting it control us.
Right.
Failures are part of the learning process.
Yeah.
I mean, the old adage of what do you do when a horse bucks you off? You get right back up on him.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's so important to own them and we don't have to fix it.
Right.
I've discussed this before. When you own a failure or success, you don't fix it. You just own it.
Right.
Just sit in that place of owning it. There is power in that, and recognize the value of that power, and just own it. And then that peace
recognize
will come.
why you failed or why you succeeded.
Yeah, but just recognize it. You don't have to fix it.
No.
This owning is not about fixing it.
Right.
There's power in just owning it.
Right. So question we have are, what failures in learning have you rejected? What successes have left you blind to new opportunities? Or what successes have you missed that you can nurture for better, more joyful learning? And so those are some things that I think we all need to ponder in our learning. One of the things that came to my mind is what successes have left you blind to new opportunities. When I was younger, I played the cello, and I was really good at it. Mm-hmm. But then we moved from Vegas to Panaca, and my parents couldn't afford a cello, so I had to give it up because where I moved to didn't have a strings program. And I think to a certain degree, I felt very good about my success as a cellist, but I didn't explore opportunities to develop my talent as a musician at the time, playing a musical instrument. Mm-hmm. I think if I had been able to, part of it had to do with when we talk about mentors. I didn't have a really good mentor when we moved to Panaca until much later. By then I was out of high school and I didn't have an opportunity. But I think that's one area where I hung on to that success and I milked it, but I didn't use it for my benefit.
Yeah, right. I was thinking of plants because some plants are easy, they're just, they'll put up with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get another plant and you're like, why didn't you live like the other one? Or you just pick one thing, like I need to water it more, and it just gets deader and deader and deader. And we're just, and sometimes it's a mentor that needs to come in and say, hey, stop watering that. It's not good for it.
Right.
But if you can't see where your failures and successes are in different situations, you can't progress.
Right. And
so one way or another, you need to figure out what those are. And just this morning, I have an area in my bedroom that I was like, hey, I could put a plant up there. I don't know if it'll live. So I sent it to some friends and I said, hey, look this, what do you think? Will this plant live here? And so I needed to recognize, is this a successful situation or will this be a failure? You know? And so one way or another, we have to figure out what those are.
Right.
And it all comes down to our own ability, our own willingness to see them.
Right.
So, cool.
All right. So the last learning blockade that we'll discuss today is accepting deceit. This happens when messages from our mentor, ourselves, and others convince us that growth is impossible by deceiving us. Using these lies, we are convinced that there is no way to benefit from truth in order to grow. Kenneth Blanchard declares these as an assumed constraint is a belief you have, based on past experience, that limits your current and future experiences. Just acknowledging the deceit about growth that you have accepted in your life has great power to release the hold those lies have in your life. Marianne Williamson says, how else can one dispel illusions except by looking at them directly without protecting them? When we gain a true understanding of growth and stretching, we will better recognize deceit that prevents growth. So what lies about your growth or yourself paralyze your joy in learning?
Well, I'm thinking of disc golf again.
Okay.
When a few episodes ago we talked about a course that recently added new holes that were smaller.
Right.
And when I was playing on this course before, and there's a few holes that are really long and they've been shortened right now. And so I'm thinking that if I'm playing a really long hole, it's easy to lie to myself and say I am really not a good golfer.
Right.
But if I'm playing 500 or 600 feet I'm not a good golfer at that level.
No.
But it's deceptive in the fact that I am a tolerable beginner golfer,
yes.
right? And that by sitting myself in a situation where I'm probably not, well, I'm certainly not going to get par, then it's going to deceive me into thinking I'm not a good one.
Right.
So that's what came to my mind today.
Yeah. Next question. What impossible expectations from others keep us from learning from others, from ourselves, and from service to others?
Do you even understand that? Does that make sense?
It's kind of a hard one.
This is a more advanced kind of question because remember with stretching, we're stretching upward, inward, and outward.
Right.
So this is applying all of those things.
Right.
So sometimes we have expectations that we think, like our mentors have for us.
Right.
We have impossible expectations from them. We have impossible expectations from ourselves and impossible expectations from just, others that may or may not be mentors.
Right.
I remember a long time ago discussing homeschooling with a friend. She's like, "Oh, I could never do that."
Yes.
And I was like, no, you don't know that.
Well,
or it demeans what I'm capable of doing,
The way I look at that question is what paralyzes us?
Right.
What do we have in our life where we just say, I can't do it? And I get back to that question, that statement I made a while ago about Matthew McConaughey. Mm-hmm. Instead of, it's like, well, I can't do it. I can't do anything. I can't accomplish it. I can't go this way. I don't have the talent. I don't have the ability, whatever. I just can't.
Right.
And it paralyzes us from going forward. It paralyzes us from reaching out to others. It paralyzes us. It just leaves us in a shell, basically.
Yeah, I mean, this is similar to assuming defeat, but it's more subtle. It's really about the lies that we tell ourselves that we believe from others or whatever that keep us from learning. And maybe it's something we really do want to learn, but we're assuming, assuming that we can't. We're accepting the lies that we're incapable of doing it.
Right. All right, so that wraps up our discussion today of these 3 learning blockades. If you have other thoughts about surrendering desires, rejecting failures and successes, and accepting deceit, we'd love to hear them. And as always, if you have questions or comments, message us at learningliberated@gmail.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group with any questions or comments. And again, if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else that might enjoy it as well. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.